The Last Stand. The crimson sky of Novus Prime burned with the fires of a dying world. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Bastion Station, Earth's final outpost in the galaxy, watching as the Jekrian invasion fleet descended upon their last refuge. Her weathered face, etched with the lines of countless battles, remained stoic as she surveyed the seemingly hopeless situation. "Status report," she barked, turning to face her crew. The command center buzzed with frantic activity, a stark contrast to her calm demeanor. Lieutenant Raj Patel, his dark eyes glued to the tactical display, responded without looking up. "The Jekrian fleet has breached our outer defenses, Commander. We're detecting over 300 warships entering low orbit. Our remaining fighters are engaging." But he trailed off, the grim reality hanging in the air. Chen nodded, having expected as much. "And the evacuation?" This time, it was Dr. Emily Sato who answered, her usually pristine lab coat now creased and stained after days without rest. "We've managed to get 60% of the colonists to the emergency shelters. But, Commander, even if we get everyone underground, it won't matter if the Jekrians glass the planet." The unspoken question hung in the air. Where do we run when this is our last refuge? Outside, the first Jekrian energy lances struck the planetary shield. The entire station shuddered, and for a moment, the lighting flickered. Chen steadied herself against a console, her mind racing through their dwindling options. "What about the Hail Mary?" she asked, her voice low enough that only her senior staff could hear. Dr. Sato's eyes widened, while Raj's face hardened. They both knew what she was referring to. Project Lazarus, humanity's last, desperate gambit. "It's ready," Dr. Sato said hesitantly. "But, Commander, we haven't had time to run proper tests. The theoretical models suggest it could work, but the risks—" "Doctor," Chen cut her off gently, "I think we're well past worrying about risks. How long to deploy?" Sato glanced at her tablet, fingers flying across the surface. "If we launch now, we can have it in position within the hour." "But Sarah," she said, dropping formality in her urgency, "you have to understand. This isn't just a weapon. If it works, it could change everything. If it doesn't, we're no worse off than we are now." Chen finished for her. She turned back to the viewport, watching as another barrage of alien fire impacted the shields. They wouldn't hold for much longer. "Lieutenant Patel, send the coded transmission to Captain Reeves. Tell him it's time to unwrap humanity's final gift to the Jekrians." Raj nodded grimly and set to work. As he did, Chen's gaze drifted to a small holoframe on her command console. It showed a younger version of herself, standing proudly next to an ordinary-looking freighter. To anyone else, it would seem unremarkable. But Chen knew that within that unassuming hull lay the culmination of human ingenuity, desperation, and hope. The Jekrians had appeared without warning 5 years ago. Their technology was centuries beyond humanity's, their motives unknowable. They spoke only in the language of destruction, sweeping through Earth's colonies like a scythe through wheat. Pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears, if the aliens even had ears. World after world fell, until only Novus Prime remained. But humans, as they had done countless times throughout history, adapted. In secret laboratories and hidden shipyards, they poured every scrap of knowledge and resource into one final project. A ship unlike any other, carrying a weapon born from the depths of human determination. A tremor ran through the station, more violent this time. Chen stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the tactical display. The holographic representation of Novus Prime's defenses was a sea of red, with the blue indicators of human ships blinking out one by one. "Shields at 30% and falling," shouted one of the junior officers. "Multiple breaches detected in sectors 7 through 12. Chen took a deep breath, centering herself. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of not just Novus Prime, but of humanity itself. "All personnel, this is Commander Chen," she announced, her voice echoing through every speaker on the station and planet below. "Enact Protocol Omega. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Throughout Bastion Station and across the surface of Novus Prime, people sprang into action. Civilians rushed to fortified bunkers deep underground. Soldiers manned their posts, determination etched on their faces. In hidden hangars, pilots scrambled to their fighters, ready to buy whatever time they could for the plan to unfold. Chen turned to Dr. Sato, who was furiously working at her console. "Emily, I need you to transmit everything we have on Project Lazarus to the Hail Mary. If this works, Captain Reeves will need every scrap of data we can give him." Sato nodded, her fingers a blur over the controls. "Transmitting now. Sarah, good luck. To all of us." Another impact rocked the station. This time, the lights didn't come back on, leaving them in the eerie glow of emergency lighting and holographic displays. "Primary power's gone," Raj reported. "We're on auxiliary systems now. Commander, we're picking up dropships launching from the Jekrian fleet. Ground invasion is imminent." Chen's jaw tightened. They were out of time. "Patch me through to Captain Reeves." A moment later, the grizzled face of Captain John Reeves appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Chen could see the interior of what looked like an ordinary freighter bridge, but she knew better. "Commander," Reeves said, his voice tight with tension. "We're in position, cloaking field holding steady. The Jekrians haven't detected us." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Good. You know what's at stake, John. The fate of our species rests on your shoulders." Reeves nodded solemnly. "We won't let you down, Sarah. The crew of the Hail Mary stands ready to deliver humanity's verdict." "Then may God have mercy on us all," Chen replied. "Because we certainly won't have any for them. Godspeed, Captain." As the communication cut off, Chen turned to face her crew. Despite the chaos, despite the fear evident in their eyes, she saw something else there too. Hope, determination, the indomitable human spirit that had carried their species through countless trials. "This is our moment," she said, her voice carrying across the command center. "Everything we fought for, everything we've lost, it all comes down to this. The Jekrians thought they could wipe us out, that we'd roll over and die. But they don't know humanity. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And today, we're going to remind the galaxy of that fact." A cheer went up from the crew, quickly drowned out by another impact that sent tremors through the station. "Shields failing," someone shouted. "Multiple hull breaches detected." Chen gripped the railing of her command platform, her knuckles white. "This is it, people. Whatever happens next, know that it has been my highest honor to serve with each and every one of you. For Earth, for humanity, let's show these bastards what we're made of." As if in response to her words, a new alarm blared. On the tactical display, a swarm of red dots detached from the main Jekrian fleet, streaking towards the planet's surface. The ground invasion had begun, and somewhere out there, invisible to both friend and foe, the Hail Mary waited to unleash humanity's final gambit. The battle for Novus Prime and the future of humanity had reached its pivotal moment. The secret weapon. Captain John Reeves stood on the bridge of the Hail Mary, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he watched the Jekrian invasion unfold. To any observer, his ship would appear to be nothing more than a standard freighter, the kind used to haul ore or supplies between colonies. But appearances, as the Jekrians were about to learn, could be deceiving. "Status report," Reeves barked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Lieutenant Maria Vasquez, the ship's operations officer, responded promptly. "Cloaking field is stable, Captain. The Jekrians are continuing their assault on Novus Prime. They haven't detected us." Reeves nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Good. Let's keep it that way. Dr. Kensington, how are we looking?" From her station at the rear of the bridge, Dr. Amelia Kensington looked up from a complex array of holographic readouts. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and dark circles under her eyes betrayed countless sleepless nights. "The Lazarus core is stable, Captain," she reported. All systems are green. But I must stress again, we've never tested this technology in actual combat conditions. The simulations were promising, but we're out of options and out of time. Reeves finished for her. I know, Doctor. We all know the risks. But it's this or extinction. The bridge fell silent, the gravity of their situation weighing heavily on every crew member. The Hail Mary represented humanity's last, desperate hope, a culmination of reverse-engineered alien technology, theoretical physics, and sheer human determination. At the heart of the ship lay the Lazarus Core, a device that, if it worked as intended, would rewrite the rules of warfare. It was named after the biblical figure raised from the dead, a fitting moniker for a weapon designed to snatch humanity from the brink of annihilation. "Sir," Vasquez called out, her voice tight with tension. "I'm detecting multiple Jekrian dropships entering Novus Prime's atmosphere. Ground invasion has commenced." Reeves clenched his jaw. They were running out of time. "All right, people. This is what we've trained for. Lieutenant Vasquez, begin power-up sequence for the Lazarus Core. Dr. Kensington, I want constant monitoring of all systems. If anything so much as flickers, I want to know about it." As the crew sprang into action, Reeves allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of Earth, of the colonies they'd lost, of the billions of lives snuffed out by the Jekrian onslaught. His resolve hardened. Today, humanity would either rise from the ashes or fade into oblivion. "Captain," Dr. Kensington called out, her voice tinged with excitement and fear. "I'm detecting an energy spike from the core. It's working." On the main view screen, a shimmering field of energy began to coalesce around the Hail Mary. It started as a faint blue glow, barely visible against the backdrop of space, but with each passing second, it grew more intense, until the ship seemed to be encased in a cocoon of crackling energy. "Lazarus field is stable," Kensington reported. "All parameters within expected ranges. We're ready, Captain." Reeves took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. "Helm, take us in. Nice and easy. Let's introduce ourselves to our Jekrian friends." The Hail Mary glided forward, still cloaked, its revolutionary weapon primed and ready. As they approached the Jekrian fleet, Reeves could see the alien ships more clearly. They were monstrous constructs of gleaming metal and pulsing energy, each one easily dwarfing the largest human battleships. "Sir," Vasquez said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we're in range." Reeves nodded, his hand hovering over the command console. "Drop the cloak. Let's show them what they're dealing with." In an instant, the Hail Mary shimmered into view, its unassuming freighter exterior belying the power contained within. For a moment, nothing happened. The Jekrian ships continued their assault on Novus Prime, seemingly oblivious to the human vessel in their midst. Then, all hell broke loose. Alarms blared across the Jekrian fleet as they finally detected the intruder. Energy weapons charge, missile bays opened, and a swarm of fighter craft peeled away from the main assault to intercept this new threat. "They've spotted us," Vasquez reported, her hands flying over her console. "Multiple weapons locks detected. They're firing." Reeves watched as a barrage of energy beams and missiles streaked towards the Hail Mary. This was the moment of truth. Either the Lazarus field would work, or they were about to become space dust. "Brace for impact," he shouted, but the impact never came. As the Jekrian weapons struck the shimmering field surrounding the Hail Mary, something extraordinary happened. The energy beams seemed to bend and distort, their destructive power dissipating harmlessly. The missiles exploded prematurely, creating a dazzling light show that left the human ship untouched. "It's working," Dr. Kensington exclaimed, her eyes wide with amazement. "The Lazarus field is absorbing and redirecting the energy, just like in the simulations." Reeves allowed himself a moment of elation before focusing on the task at hand. "All right, people, Phase 1 is a success. Now let's show them what this ship can really do." "Dr. Kensington, Prepare to initiate Phase 2. As the scientist worked feverishly at her station, Reeves turned his attention back to the battle. The Zekrian ships were regrouping, clearly thrown off by the ineffectiveness of their initial assault. But Reeves knew they wouldn't stay confused for long. "Sir," Vasquez called out, "I'm detecting a massive energy buildup from the largest Zekrian vessel. I think they're preparing to fire their main cannon." Reeves nodded grimly. "Let them come." "Dr. Kensington, status." "Phase 2 is ready, Captain," she replied. "On your mark." The space around the Hail Mary lit up as the Zekrian flagship unleashed its primary weapon, a beam of energy so intense it seemed to distort the very fabric of space. It struck the Lazarus field head-on, the collision creating a blinding flash that forced everyone on the bridge to shield their eyes. For a heart-stopping moment, Reeves feared they had miscalculated. But as the light faded, the Hail Mary remained intact, its protective field glowing brighter than ever. "Now, Doctor," Reeves shouted, "initiate Phase 2. Dr. Kensington slammed her hand down on a glowing panel, and the Lazarus core thrummed to life. The energy field surrounding the ship pulsed once, twice, and then a wave of crackling blue energy exploded outward from the Hail Mary, expanding at an impossible speed. It washed over the nearest Zekrian ships like a tsunami, and as it passed, something incredible happened. The alien vessels began to change. Their sleek, otherworldly designs seemed to warp and twist. Weapons ports sealed themselves shut. Engines sputtered and died. It was as if the ships were being unmade before their very eyes. "My God," Vasquez whispered, "it's working. The Lazarus field is rewriting their molecular structure." Reeves watched in awe as the Zekrian fleet, once so terrifying in its power, began to crumble. Ships that had withstood the full might of Earth's defenses were now breaking apart, their alien alloys transmuted into harmless compounds by the Lazarus field. "Status report," Reeves demanded, barely able to believe what he was seeing. Dr. Kensington's voice was filled with wonder as she responded. "The Lazarus field is functioning beyond our wildest expectations, Captain. It's not just disabling their ships. It's completely neutralizing their technology. The Zekrian weapons, their shields, even their communication systems, it's all being rendered inert." As the wave of energy continued to expand, encompassing more and more of the alien fleet, Reeves allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. "Hope. Send a message to Commander Chen," he ordered. Tell her the Hail Mary has been delivered." On Novus Prime, in the battered command center of Bastion Station, Commander Sarah Chen watched in disbelief as the tactical display showed Zekrian ships going dark by the dozens. A transmission from the Hail Mary flashed across her screen, and for the first time in years, she felt tears welling up in her eyes. "They did it," she whispered. They actually did it. But even as hope loomed in her heart, Chen knew the battle was far from over. The Zekrians on the ground were still a threat, and there was no telling how the aliens would respond to this unprecedented defeat. As the Lazarus field continued to expand, rewriting the rules of the conflict with each passing moment, humanity stood on the precipice of either a new dawn or an even darker night. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of Novus Prime, but the future of the entire human race. And aboard the Hail Mary, Captain John Reeves and his crew steeled themselves for what was to come. They had struck a mighty blow, but the war was far from over. The true test of humanity's resolve was just beginning. Battle of Deception. The bridge of the Hail Mary hummed with tension as Captain John Reeves watched the Zekrian fleet disintegrate before his eyes. Ships that had once struck terror into the hearts of humanity were now drifting helplessly, their advanced technology rendered useless by the Lazarus field. "Status report," Reeves barked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. Lieutenant Vasquez responded promptly, her voice tight with concentration. "The Lazarus field has neutralized approximately 60% of the Zekrian fleet, sir. However, we're detecting increased activity from the remaining ships. I think they're trying to adapt. Dr. Kensington's voice cut in, urgent and worried. Captain, the core is starting to show signs of strain. We can't maintain this level of output indefinitely. Reeves nodded grimly. They had struck a devastating blow, but the battle was far from over. The element of surprise was gone, and now they faced a desperate and cornered enemy. All right, people. Time for Phase 3. Let's show these bastards what else we've got up our sleeves. On his command, the crew sprang into action. The Hail Mary's unremarkable exterior began to shift and change. Panels slid away, revealing hidden weapon ports. The ship's very shape seemed to alter, transforming from a simple freighter into a sleek, predatory vessel, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Metamorphosis complete, Captain, Vasquez reported. All systems online and ready. Reeves allowed himself a small smile. The Hail Mary wasn't just a one-trick pony. It was the culmination of every scrap of innovation humanity could muster, a testament to their determination to survive. Target the nearest operational Jikrian vessel. Let's see how they like a taste of their own medicine. The Hail Mary surged forward, its newly revealed weapons powering up. Beams of energy, reverse-engineered from captured Jikrian technology, lanced out towards the alien ships, where once human weapons had been barely able to scratch the Jikrian hulls. Now they cut through them like a hot knife through butter. On Novus Prime, Commander Chen watched the battle unfold with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The Hail Mary's initial assault had turned the tide, but the ground battle was still raging. "Commander," Lieutenant Patel called out, "the Jikrian ground forces are falling back. They seem to be retreating to their dropships." Chen's eyes narrowed. This wasn't like the Jikrians. In all their encounters, the aliens had never shown any inclination towards retreat. "It's a trick," she muttered. "They're up to something." All units maintained defensive positions. Back in space, the battle had taken on a frantic intensity. The remaining Jikrian ships, now wise to the threat posed by the Hail Mary, were keeping their distance, firing long-range weapons in an attempt to overwhelm the human vessel's defenses. "Shields holding at 80%, Captain," Vasquez reported. "But they're learning. Their attacks are becoming more coordinated." Reeves gripped the command rail tighter. "Dr. Kensington, what's the status of the Lazarus core?" The scientist's face was etched with concern as she responded. "It's stable for now, but we can't maintain this level of output for much longer. We need to end this quickly, Captain." As if in response to her words, a new alarm blared across the bridge. Vasquez's eyes widened as she interpreted the data streaming across her console. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy spike from the Jikrian flagship. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." On the main view screen, the enormous Jikrian vessel seemed to shimmer and distort. Its hull began to glow with an otherworldly light, and space itself seemed to bend around it. Dr. Kensington gasped. "They're attempting to open a hyperspace rift. If they succeed, they could bring reinforcements or escape." Reeves' mind raced. They couldn't let the Jikrians escape, not when victory was so close. But neither could they risk letting more alien ships through. "All power to the Lazarus core," he ordered. "We need to disrupt that rift before it fully forms." The Hail Mary surged forward, its engines straining as it closed the distance to the Jikrian flagship. The space around them crackled with energy as the alien vessel continued its attempt to tear open the fabric of space-time. "We're in range," Vasquez shouted. "Now, Doctor," Reeves commanded. Dr. Kensington activated the Lazarus core at full power. A pulse of energy, more intense than anything they had yet unleashed, erupted from the Hail Mary. It struck the forming hyperspace rift head-on, creating a spectacular collision of energies. For a moment, it seemed as if the very universe held its breath. Then, with a silent explosion that shook the Hail Mary to its core, the rift collapsed in on itself. The Jikrian flagship, caught in the backlash, was torn apart by the very forces it had tried to control. On the bridge of the Hail Mary, Alarms blared as systems overloaded from the strain. Lazarus Core is offline. Dr. Kensington shouted over the cacophony. We've burned it out. Reeves steadied himself against his command console. Damage report. Vasquez's fingers flew over her controls as she assessed their situation. Shields are down to 20%. Weapon systems are offline. We're running on auxiliary power. For a tense moment, Reeves feared they had overplayed their hand. But as the chaos subsided, he realized the gambit had paid off. The remaining Zikrian ships, witnessing the destruction of their flagship and the failure of their last-ditch effort, began to retreat. They're running, Vasquez said, disbelief evident in her voice. The Zikrian fleet is in full retreat. A cheer went up from the crew, but Reeves silenced it with a raised hand. Don't celebrate yet. What's happening on the ground? The answer came not from his crew, but from an incoming transmission. Commander Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her expression a mix of exhaustion and elation. Captain Reeves, she said, a rare smile crossing her features. I don't know what you did up there, but the Zikrian ground forces are in disarray. They're abandoning their positions, trying to get back to any ships that can still fly. Reeves allowed himself a moment of relief. Glad to hear it, Commander. But we're not out of the woods yet. The Hail Mary's taken a beating. We're running on fumes up here. Chen nodded, her expression turning serious once more. Understood. We'll handle things on the ground. You've done more than enough, Captain. Bring your ship home. As the transmission ended, Reeves turned to his crew. Despite their exhaustion, he could see the pride shining in their eyes. They had faced humanity's greatest threat and emerged victorious. You heard the commander, he said. Let's go home. As the Hail Mary limped back towards Novus Prime, escorted by the few remaining human fighters, Reeves allowed himself to truly believe, for the first time in years, that humanity might have a future after all. But even as hope bloomed, a nagging doubt persisted in the back of his mind. The Zikrians had been defeated, yes, but not destroyed. And if there was one thing humans knew well, it was that wounded animals were often the most dangerous. As the Hail Mary limped back towards Novus Prime, escorted by the few remaining human fighters, Reeves allowed himself to truly believe, for the first time in years, that humanity might have a future after all. But even as hope bloomed, a nagging doubt persisted in the back of his mind. The Zikrians had been defeated, yes, but not destroyed. And if there was one thing humans knew well, it was that wounded animals were often most dangerous. The battle was won, but Reeves couldn't shake the feeling that the war was far from over. As Novus Prime grew larger in their view screen, he silently vowed to remain vigilant. Humanity had earned a reprieve, but the price of freedom, as always, would be eternal vigilance. Alien counterattack. The celebrations on Novus Prime were short-lived. As the last of the Zikrian ships disappeared from their sensors, Commander Sarah Chen stood in the war room of Bastion Station, surrounded by her senior staff. The holographic display showed the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields where once mighty alien warships had been reduced to scrap, and the battered but triumphant Hail Mary limping back to port. We've won a great victory today, Chen began, her voice grave despite their success. But we can't afford to let our guard down. The Zikrians have never retreated before. We have to assume they'll be back, and in greater numbers. Dr. Emily Sato nodded in agreement. Commander, I've been analyzing the data from the battle. The Lazarus field was incredibly effective, but the Zikrians were already starting to adapt before they retreated. We need to prepare for the possibility that it won't be as effective next time. Chen's jaw tightened. Understood. What's the status of our defenses? Lieutenant Raj Patil pulled up a new set of holograms. We've managed to restore about 60% of our orbital defense grid. Ground-based batteries are at 75% capacity. But our fighter squadrons... He trailed off, his expression grim. How bad? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. We're down to less than 20% of our original complement. The Hail Mary turned the tide, but we paid a heavy price getting to that point. Chen absorbed this information, her mind already racing through possible strategies. All right. Our priority now is to get our defenses back to full strength as quickly as possible. Dr. Sato, I want you working with the team from the Hail Mary. See if we can replicate the Lazarus field technology, or at least come up with some countermeasures based on it. As her team dispersed to carry out their orders, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. The Jekrians had proven to be relentless foes, and she doubted their recent defeat would do anything but enrage them further. Her fears were realized sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after the battle, as Novus Prime was still licking its wounds and struggling to rebuild, the sensors lit up like a Christmas tree. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Lieutenant Patel shouted, his voice tight with alarm. It's, by the stars, it's at least twice the size of the previous fleet. Chen's blood ran cold. She had expected a counterattack, but not this soon, and not on this scale. Sound the alarm. All personnel to battle stations. Get me Captain Reeves on the Hail Mary. As the station erupted into frantic activity, Chen studied the tactical display with growing dread. The new Jekrian fleet was unlike anything they had seen before. The ships were darker, their designs more angular and menacing. And at the center of the formation was a behemoth that dwarfed even their previous flagship. Captain Reeves' face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. We see them, Commander. The Hail Mary is prepped and ready to launch. Chen nodded, grateful for the man's steady presence. Be careful out there, John. We have no idea what new tricks they might have up their sleeves. As if in answer to her words, the Jekrian fleet began to move. But instead of pressing the attack immediately, they formed a wide perimeter around Novus Prime. Then, to everyone's shock, a transmission came through on all frequencies. For the first time since their arrival in human space, the Jekrian spoke. The message was a cacophony of screeches and clicks, but the computer quickly translated it. Humans, you have proven yourselves to be more resilient than anticipated. We offer you one chance to surrender. Capitulate now, and we will grant you a swift death. Resist, and we will ensure your extinction is long and painful. A stunned silence fell over the command center. Chen exchanged a glance with Reeves on the view screen, seeing her own determination mirrored in his eyes. Like hell, Chen muttered, before opening a channel to respond. This is Commander Sarah Chen of Earth's last colony. We've kicked your asses once, and we'll do it again. Humanity doesn't surrender. For a moment, there was no response. Then, without warning, the Jekrian fleet unleashed hell. But this was no ordinary barrage. As the energy weapons struck Novus Prime's shields, they seemed to phase through them, impacting the planet's surface directly. Entire cities were vaporized in an instant. They've adapted their weapons to bypass our shields. Dr. Sato cried out in horror. Chen gritted her teeth. Launch all fighters. Captain Reeves, you're clear to engage. Hit them with everything we've got. The Hail Mary surged forward, its Lazarus field humming to life. But as it approached the Jekrian lines, something unexpected happened. The alien ships closest to it began to emit a strange, pulsing energy field of their own. They've developed some kind of counter to the Lazarus field. Dr. Sato exclaimed, her eyes wide as she analyzed the incoming data. It's not nullifying it completely, but it's severely limiting its effectiveness. On the Hail Mary's bridge, Captain Reeves watched in dismay as his ship's greatest advantage was neutralized. All weapons, fire at will, he ordered, determined to press the attack despite the setback. The space around Novus Prime erupted into a maelstrom of energy weapons, missiles, and explosions. Human fighters darted between the massive Jekrian ships, scoring hits where they could but being swatted out of the sky in alarming numbers. Back on Bastion Station, Chen watched the battle unfold with growing despair. Their defenses were crumbling, the Hail Mary was being pushed back, and the Jekrian super-dreadnought was advancing inexorably towards the planet. Commander, Lieutenant Patel called out, his voice shaking. "I'm detecting some kind of buildup from the Shikrian flagship. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." As they watched, the massive alien vessel began to split open, revealing a pulsing core of energy at its heart. The very fabric of space seemed to warp around it. Dr. Seto's face went pale as she interpreted the readings. "It's some kind of gravity weapon. If they fire that at the planet..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what it meant. Total annihilation. Chen's mind raced. They were out of options, outgunned, and rapidly running out of time. But as she looked around at her crew, at the determination in their eyes despite the overwhelming odds, she knew they weren't beaten yet. Humanity had come too far, endured too much, to give up now. "Dr. Sato," she said, a desperate plan forming in her mind. "The Lazarus core on the Hail Mary. If we overloaded it, created some kind of feedback loop with their gravity weapon, could it work?" Sato's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "It's possible. But, Commander, the energy release would be catastrophic. It could tear a hole in space-time itself." Chen nodded grimly. "Better that than letting them wipe us out. Get me, Captain Reeves. We have one last card to play." As she outlined the plan to Reeves, Chen knew she was potentially sacrificing humanity's greatest achievement and the brave crew of the Hail Mary on a desperate gambit. But as she looked at the tactical display, at the unstoppable Zikrian advance, she knew they had no choice. It was time for humanity's last stand. Either they would emerge victorious, or they would go down fighting, taking as many of the alien bastards with them as they could. As the Hail Mary began its suicide run towards the Zikrian flagship, Chen silently prayed to whatever powers might be listening. The fate of humanity now rested on the razor's edge between annihilation and survival. The final battle for Novus Prime, and for the future of the human race, had begun. Triumph of humanity. The Hail Mary streaked through the chaotic battlefield, its engine straining as it made its final desperate charge towards the Zikrian flagship. On the bridge, Captain John Reeves stood tall, his face a mask of grim determination. "All power to engines and shields," he ordered. "We get one shot at this. Make it count." As they approached the massive alien vessel, its gravity weapon pulsing with ominous energy, the Hail Mary shuddered under the impact of countless energy beams and missiles. The Zikrians, realizing the threat, were throwing everything they had at the lone human ship. Back on Bastion Station, Commander Chen watched the unfolding drama with bated breath. "Status of the Hail Mary," she demanded. Lieutenant Patel's voice was tight as he responded. "Shields at 15% and falling. They're taking heavy damage, but they're still on course." Dr. Seto interjected, her eyes fixed on her readouts. "The Zikrian gravity weapon is nearly charged. We have less than 2 minutes before they can fire." Chen gritted her teeth. It was going to be close. Too close. "All remaining fighters, concentrate fire on the Zikrian escort ships. Give the Hail Mary a clear shot." Across the battlefield, the few surviving human fighters redoubled their efforts, launching suicidal attacks on the alien vessels protecting their flagship. One by one, they sacrificed themselves, clearing a path for humanity's last hope. On the Hail Mary, alarms blared as systems failed under the relentless assault. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Lieutenant Vasquez reported, her hands flying over her console. "We're venting atmosphere." Reeves nodded grimly. "Seal off those sections. Divert all remaining power to the Lazarus core." Dr. Kensington's voice was strained as she responded. "Captain, if we push the core any harder, we risk a catastrophic overload before we even reach the target." "We don't have a choice, Doctor," Reeves replied. "It's all or nothing now." As the Hail Mary closed the final distance to the Zikrian flagship, time seemed to slow. The massive alien vessel loomed before them, its gravity weapon now a blinding orb of energy. "Impact in 10 seconds. Vasquez called out. Reeves took a deep breath. Initiate Lazarus Core Overload. It's been an honor serving with you all. The Hail Mary's engines flared one last time as it plunged towards the heart of the Jekrian weapon. In its final moments, the ship's Lazarus field expanded explosively, interacting with the alien gravity weapon in a cataclysmic release of energy. For a brief instant, the space around the two ships seemed to warp and twist. Then, with a silent flash that outshone the stars themselves, both vessels vanished in a maelstrom of unimaginable energies. On Bastion Station, the sensors momentarily overloaded, plunging the command center into darkness. When the systems came back online, the tactical display showed a sight that left everyone speechless. Where the Jekrian flagship had been, there was now a swirling vortex of energy, a rift in the very fabric of space-time, and it was expanding. "My God," Dr. Sato whispered. "They did it. The feedback loop between the Lazarus core and the gravity weapon. It's created some kind of artificial singularity." As they watched, the rift began to pull in the surrounding Jekrian ships. The alien vessels, caught in its inexorable pull, were torn apart and swallowed by the swirling maelstrom. "The rift is stabilizing," Sato reported, her voice filled with awe. It's becoming a controlled wormhole." Chen's mind raced with the implications. "Can we use it?" Sato nodded excitedly. "Theoretically, yes. It's connected to somewhere, possibly even the Jekrian home system." A fierce grin spread across Chen's face. It was time to end this, once and for all. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. Prepare for immediate assault through the wormhole. We're taking the fight to them." As the remaining human forces rallied for this unexpected counterattack, Chen allowed herself a moment to remember those who had sacrificed everything to give them this chance. Captain Reeves, the crew of the Hail Mary, and countless others who had fallen in humanity's darkest hour. "This is for Earth," she murmured. "For all of us." The human fleet, a ragtag collection of battered warships and hastily armed civilian vessels, plunged into the wormhole. They emerged into chaos, finding themselves in orbit around a world that could only be the Jekrian homeworld. The aliens, caught completely off guard by this unprecedented invasion, scrambled to mount a defense. But it was too late. Humanity, armed with the knowledge gained from their previous encounters and driven by an unquenchable thirst for justice, struck hard and fast. Within hours, the Jekrian leadership sued for peace, their grand plans of galactic conquest lying in ruins around them. As Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the alien citadel, accepting their unconditional surrender, she felt a complex mix of emotions: joy at their victory, sorrow for the terrible cost, and a steely determination to ensure that humanity would never again be so vulnerable. In the days that followed, as the wormhole stabilized into a permanent link between Novus Prime and the former Jekrian Empire, humanity began the long process of rebuilding. They had not only survived, but had inherited the advanced technology of their would-be conquerors. The stars, once a reminder of how small and vulnerable they were, now beckoned with the promise of a new era of exploration and growth. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger than ever. They had proven, beyond any doubt, that they were a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. As Commander Chen looked out at the alien world that would now be humanity's stepping stone to the stars, she allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead would be challenging, but after all they had endured, she knew one thing for certain: humanity was ready for whatever the universe might throw at them next. The Hail Mary's sacrifice had not been in vain. It had delivered humanity from the brink of annihilation to the threshold of a grand and boundless future. And as the first colony ships from Earth, contacted through the wormhole, began to arrive at Novus Prime, Chen knew that this was not the end of humanity's story. It was only the beginning.